All right, we are joined today by Omari Malik, who is the founder of BlackTooth Publishing, which is a Brooklyn-based, independently owned Black publishing company. And we are super, super excited to have him here today to talk about all the amazing work that he's doing and all the experiences that he's had as the co-founder of BlackTooth Publishing, or excuse me, as the founder of BlackTooth Publishing. But Omari, man, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. Thank you guys for having me. What's up? What's up? Like you said, Brooklyn's in here, man. Big black tooth.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for graciously making the time to talk to us today about all the stuff that you have going on and your experiences, in the comic book industry. But we should just dive right into it, man, and really get a better understanding of what you do over at Blacktooth and really your experience in the industry. But I think the natural place to start is just, what made you want to get to this place of starting your own comic book publishing company? What drove, sort of that motivation to actually take that step? Because it's a pretty huge step to go out on your own and say you're going to completely create your own stories and your own pipeline for comic book stories. And so what inspired that decision for you to go out and explore that?
So it's super funny, but I say half of it is like being a lifelong love of comic books, and then just like an ignorance or not understanding how things are done. So I tell people like my pops was a big comic book head. Like I grew up around long boxes, so it's like
Hmm.
all the old '90s comics. Like the Image stuff, the Chuck Dixon, Batman, and DC stuff, and all those sort of things, and like getting into being a 2000s a kid that grew up in the early 2000s, like if you're in a Naruto, you're in a Dragon Ball Z and stuff like that, like you hear created by on everything, and even like looking at the Image guys and looking at Todd McFarlane and like, oh, he created that, or like he made this. It's like, or Frank Miller too would be like, oh, he created Sin City in 300. It's like I didn't understand that people were also just getting hired to write. So it's like being
Hmm.
always in the comics. It's like I for a long time didn't understand that it's like, oh no, I could get hired and like write for Batman or write for the Flash. It's like I as a little kid before I started going to the comic book shops and buying stuff on my own, I was already just kind of creating because it's like, oh no, I have to make my own thing because if I don't, like who's gonna hire me to write Batman? Who's gonna hire me to write Spider-Man and stuff like that? Like I have to make my own thing, and also kind of being in the directors, like Tyler Perry, Spike Lee, written and directed and stuff like that. So it's like I always had that kind of creative bug to want to do my own thing on top of being a punk rock kid and not taking a long time to learn how to play guitar. So you just down pick and try to be a DIYer and jump off the stage and kind of do your own thing. So it's like that's always been my mentality of like, no, it's gonna take too long to figure out how to do this or figure out how to do that. So let me just go ahead and like wing it and do my own thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It sounds like you. I think the love of comic books is so interesting because not a lot of, I think us, right, like Black people in general, necessarily grew up with like parents who were always into comics. Like a lot of
Yeah.
people did, but a lot of us don't meet like, hey, how you doing? I know my parents love comic books, so do I. That's just so rare that I think we run into that. So it's always interesting when somebody's like, "Yeah, my dad had long boxes." I'm like, "Man, that's a lot of people did not, don't necessarily have that experience." So I love hearing that you did have the experience. And so now with Blacktooth, right? You have your own characters and your own stories that you're telling. And so if you could just tell us a little bit about, man, Snake Bite, Dog Pile, and what's the third one? Adastra.
Yeah,
I've read Dogpile for sure, but tell us kind of about your characters and your stories, man.
so yeah, so for me, I also went to business school. So like you said, because not a lot of us are like have parents that are into it. My dad was into it, but like my mom and my stepdad, like they were not comic book people. So it's like being a little kid and being like, oh no, I want to play guitar, write comics. They're like, yo, you need a real job. Like you need to
Mhm.
do something seriously. So like I ended up going to business school and like doing that. So I introduced that to say like when I decided to kind of pursue this and really do it, like I approached it from a business standpoint of like, all right, no, I need to have different books that hit different markets and also being a fan and like having to grow up really and like be around my younger sister and like always watching Teen Nick and Disney Channel and things like that is why I kind of created a Dash. So Dasher is the story of a 15-year-old girl that has the power to shapeshift. She can be anything she wants, but she's struggling to be herself. And that's me watching my little sister be a Gemini and go be a bunch of different things, go through a bunch of different phases, and kind of watching her grow up on top of the fact that it's like forcing me to go see the Hannah Montana movie with her, like going watching the Cheetah Girls and That's So Raven and all that sort of stuff. And I wanted to have something, for people like my little sister who is not a comic book person at all, something for her to be into. And then Dogpile was for people like myself that were obsessed with 4 Kids TV and Toonami. Dogpile's my manga. It's, like any anime or manga protagonist, my main character loses his family in a mysterious accident, runs away, kind of develops superpowers, and as he's running and finding himself, he keeps coming across stray dogs, and those dogs kind of become his new family. And now, after reaching a certain point in his journey, he's like, "Nah, I'm strong enough. I'm ready to go home and figure out what happened." As I, try to do better for my community and kind of be the person that I think my parents would have wanted me to be. And then the last one is just, me catering. I tell people that like my mother, like me and my mother, like watch a bunch of TV and movies, and we still talk about things, and like we're very much into like hood movies, I would say. So I tell people that like Snakebite is my take on like an urban or like hood movie where it's like, they're my main characters are kind of teetering the line. He's literally slithering. Like he's back and forth between do I jump into the streets or do I, do the right thing? And after getting out of juvie, he gets tattoos. The tattoos give him superpowers. So now we're trying to see his journey of is he going to use these powers to be the biggest big homie in his hood, or is he going to be a hero? Is he going to do something better? And kind of where is his life going to go? And then, just to wrap it up, like the last one, I have a compilation, which is just a throwback to old comics. If you read the actual detective comics or old school Amazing Fantasy, where it was a bunch of stories where our favorite heroes would debut from. So that's why I have my book, The BlackTooth Battalion. That way, if you're not into a particular, story or a genre that might not suit you, you can try it out, sample it, find something you like.
I'm really fascinated by, you shepherding these stories in this way because you're creating characters and stories and worlds and just so many things that you have to build out with your imagination. And I'm curious to know how much of it you are pulling from your own experience. You talked about your relationship with your mom and your sister, of course, and how they sort of influenced a couple of these stories. But do you find that a lot of the stories that you craft typically come from these very real places, or is a lot of this just living in your head and it's been like things that you've ideated upon and have had in your imagination for years and years and years, and these are, sort of the ways that you've been able to figure out how to get these stories on a paper?
It's a little bit of both, man. If any of my friends would tell you, like I'm always like kind of typing in my notes of like funny things that'll happen, or like people with certain quirks, or just excuse me, just different kind of interesting things. So it's like, yeah, an idea like a dasher will start of like me being like, oh, my sister. Okay, so you want to sew today? Oh, you want to be a YouTuber today? Oh, wait, no, now you want to join a basketball team or you want to do that. So it's like translating that into a story, mixing in with the fact of like, oh, I had an ex-girlfriend that like had a little beef with her older sister, and being like, that would be a cool dynamic to throw in there. And then like
Mhm.
hearing stories of my mother and her childhood of like how she used to be mean to other kids, and like nobody my mother never got bullied because like she always was like a shit talker and just like, kind of like a little bit of a mean girl. So you hear all these different things, and then I live in New York City, so you watching stuff on the train, just working retail and having all those stories and just things like that of like a little the real world as the base, and then the imagination of like, oh, making it wild. Like I grew up with a dog, so one of the dogs in my story, Dog Pile, is like one of is well actually my mother's dog, but it's like imagine if she could talk back. Like she's always hearing us argue. Like what if she could comment on what we're going on, or like what would she do there, or what would we do that, or like the moments where you're like, oh, I wish I had superpowers, and like you're just using the imagination to make the real stuff like more more symbolic, drive the narrative home of like the tough decisions and things like that, or just the transforming nature of growing up, and difficulties, and just being able to explore creativity, man, being able to have fun with it and stuff like that.
No, absolutely. Man, I love that. That was really good. So you talked about Snakebite, right? And how you said that kind of appeals to kind of your manga base, right? And people who like manga. But that's not your only manga, right? You also had a little collaboration called Nothing But Net, right?
Yeah,
With Hypland and the NBA. Wow,
yeah,
those
man.
two things, all of these worlds coming together into one is not something I expected. Kind of just tell us about that collaboration, maybe the manga itself, or even how it came about.
So shout out, like I said, I'm so blessed with a lot of things that happen, but like shout out to one of my homegirls that does a lot of like work in at Hypland and stuff like with their pop-ups. And like if you go to New York Comic Con, you'll see her working their booth. And we went to college together, and I always got my books on me, always networking, and I run into her, and she's like, "Yo, oh, like you doing comics or whatever? Like, yo, you need to holler at Jordan. Like, Jordan's trying to do stuff, and Jordan's the owner of Hypeland." So me and him just kind of clicked, and just started talking. And obviously, if anybody's familiar with Hypeland, they're a big as for in the street world community from doing collabs with Bleach, Naruto, Zatch Bell, Hello Kitty. They just did Sonic, like a bunch of awesome, awesome things. So me and Jordan, like chopped it up, exchanged numbers, and sent him my stuff. And I'm like, yo, listen, man, like whatever comes about, like whether you want to do some original Hypeland stuff, like I love clothes. Like I've done stuff for Barriers in New York, which is another big streetwear brand. I'm like, yo, listen, I like this fashion stuff too. So however we can get in to fit in, or like what I can do to help, if you're willing to help, like we'll figure it out. And that's when he hit me and he was like, yo, listen, like obviously at the time we were keeping it secretive, but like, yo, so we got this group of teams and we're about to do a collab with them. It's gonna be All-Star weekend. Like, what do you got going on? And presented the ideas, pitched it to the NBA and all that sort of stuff, and it came together and it was awesome, man. Like to tell people what the manga's about, so Hypeland did a collab with the NBA and it was focused around 8 teams. So we basically kind of fictionalized the mascots of those 8 teams as kind of like superpowered basketball players. And we have an evil alien overlord coming to basically destroy the earth and destroy the game of basketball. And they have to go through different challenges, playing horse, playing 2-on-2, a 3-point contest to kind of save the world. So yeah, we did a 32-page manga that came with every piece from the collection. There were varsity jackets, hoodies, t-shirts, the whole nine, even rugs, blankets. It was dope.
That's an incredible success right there, and I mean, you've already had a lot of success, and you're doing a lot with the work that you're sort of putting out there in the world. But to shift gears slightly, to start this and to really build this from the ground up, I mean, that's not an easy decision to make. And I was looking at your site, and your story kind of talked about you working, more traditional corporate America style job, and kind of being unsatisfied, and deciding to pursue this thing that you've been passionate about for essentially your entire life. I mean, did you always like know that you wanted to get to that place, and how long had that sort of been bubbling up inside of you, knowing that it's hard to go out on your own and to do something of this nature, and you still have to support yourself and take care of yourself and your family, things of that nature. Like, there's a balance there, of course, right? But there has to be a place where you can feed that creative spirit and energy. So did you always know that it was going to eventually end up at this particular point, or how long did that kind of bubble up inside of you to really step out on the ledge and just make this decision on faith?
So it's always like I said, it's always technically been what I wanted. Like this was literally my first dream. Like I remember being in fifth grade and like coming up with original characters and writing a bunch of old scripts and drawing a bunch of terrible drawings and trying to do this. But then you grow up and you get into different things. So it's like there's been points in my life where I've taken a step back from comics and I got really into music. So I really wanted to be a guitar player, and I was in a couple bands that were doing well, and kind of was at a bit of a crossroad because like the best band I had been in, like I had joined like right before my senior year, and we were building traction and doing stuff, but not fast enough to tell my mother and my stepdad that like, yo, I don't need to go to college. Like this is about to take off. But ironically enough, as soon as I got to St. John's and like within our first semester, that's when we got the record deal. But by then, I was having too much fun in the dorms, hanging around girls, doing that sort of thing, and like kind of really locked in on school, joined my frat, and was still, like I said, always in, this is while Marvel movies are going crazy. So I'm always in the movies, always like if I can get down to the city and go to Midtown or go to St. Mark's Comics, like still popping in, but it's like kind of focusing on school and really getting into that. But still always writing in my notes or like sketching things out and always kind of doing it. And when I graduated and I was just kind of scared. I was like, holy crap, like I'm about to have a job. Like I'm starting a job in a few weeks. Like this is about to be my real life. And I have to do this until I'm what, 65? Like like I said, like a bit of a post-college like crisis. And I was like, nah, I don't want to do that, man. I was like, yo, I gotta try this comic thing before I'm too deep in. So I basically kind of wrote a manifesto and like as far as like what I wanted my company to be, what characters I wanted to go through, and basically kind of started brainstorming that. And funny enough, like I presented it to my girlfriend at the time, and like she was like, "This is cool. That character sucks. Don't use that character." which thank God for her, because had that not happened, then we wouldn't have Snakebite as what it is today. Because the main character Snakebite was actually the villain in that one story, but she kind of steered me in a different direction, and I started that job and made good money and got distracted because it's like, oh, I can afford to blow a bag at Comic Con. Oh, we can do this. We having dinner here. Like, was really enjoying life. And I'll say it was like the pandemic that kind of brought me back into focus, because I was sitting there like, oh yeah, I don't like this job. This isn't what I want to do.
Mhm.
Let me go pull back out that sketch pad. Let me go pull back out that manifesto and like really hit the ground running. And I say like I said, always thank God, because it's like had I not done that, the business wouldn't have been as well. Wouldn't I say the business wouldn't have done as well, because I had the experience in corporate America. Like I was an insurance broker. I currently like I've worked in investment banking, and it's like I understand how people do business, how they set up proposal docs, how they work budgets, how they work, how they try to scale and work on profitization and monetize, like how they work on trying to monetize things and get the ball rolling. So it's like all those transferable skills. I put that mix that in with the creativity, and now like things have been booming. Like I didn't really have too many major hiccups as far as getting a business off the ground. Finding a lawyer, finding an accountant, being able to structure contracts, talk to different artists, talk to creators, and like really get things going.
Yeah, and man, things are really going for you right now. You talked a lot about the inception of BlackTooth, right, or your publishing company, and the way you've created it. But what is your, and this is a big question, man. What is I think your, not necessarily your goal, but what is like your vision, man, for BlackTooth right now? What is like within the coming years? Where do you hope to see the company? Maybe something you want to accomplish, or kind of in that ballpark. What is something that you see, or a place that you see BlackTooth within the coming years?
Man, if you would have asked me, man, I tell people, man, I wanna own the trap, man. I want to be everything. Like the goal for Blacktooth is to be a one-stop shop. So it's like I want to be able to have the office where I'm sitting in the back writing the comics, go down to the floor, pass it to the artist. Then once that's gone, we give it to the letterer, we give it to the colorist, and then we got the printers in the back, so we're printing and shipping everything, doing it ourselves. Doing merch, kind of being self sufficient. Kind of doing
Mhm.
everything, and like not to exclude people, but it's like I'm so anal about stuff, and I love this stuff so much. So it's like I can't imagine like giving a license and not like to H&M and not being at the H&M offices every day. Like, all right, no, he has to look like this, or like, no, we
Mhm.
need this material. So it's like just because I kind of have that in me, like I want to be able to have my hand on everything and connect with people, and also be a place for other creators to come in. Like one thing that I didn't like, being a punk rock kid, is like when bands would get signed and their sound would change, or they wouldn't be
Mhm.
allowed to do what they wanted to do. So it's like, I'm currently working on, putting out a poetry book for somebody, and the advice and editing tips I've given them hasn't been to change the content, but it's like, all right, no, like, you're being very creative, but like we're gonna make you creatively make money. Like I know you're like hesitant about doing this, but like no, we're gonna put you on the road, do this, and like do things to not change anything, but just make it bigger, make it larger. Not necessarily trying to censor it because like there's a bunch of prominent Black creators in mainstream comics, but we don't get a lot of stories that always kind of reflect us.
Mm.
It's because people are trying to fit into this box of like, oh, what will sell here or what people are used to. But it's like I want to do things that it's like, listen, it can be whatever you want it to be. We just package it, sell it this way, do it this way, but like feel free to express yourself and be who you want to be and tell your story your way. Sort of deal.
For sure, for sure. A big part of this too is you having the ability and really the passion and the motivation to like get the word out about the stuff that you're doing. And so see that you have traveled a lot, have been to many cons, and New York Comic Con just passed up as well. And that's clearly, one of the largest in the country to really have a platform to showcase the work that you're doing at BlackTooth. Kind of talk to us about your experience there, or even, compared to past years, what it was like this year, and just like other places you visited and other cons and exhibitions that you've been a part of, to help get the word out and what those experiences have been like. Because I think a lot of people, they would probably want to get into this industry and into the space, but there's a lot that has to go into the work behind the scenes to make sure that people even know the stuff that you're doing, right? And you have to really be out there putting your face in front of all these different people. So what's that experience been like for you?
It's been a whirlwind, man. Like it's doing cons differently. Like when you go from the fan side to the creative side, like it's different because it's like one, I used to love to run around and buy a bunch of stuff, but now I'm kind of at times stuck behind the table just trying to pitch and sell to people. But it's definitely interesting. So like, I mean, really quickly, like I was within a year of New York Comic Con. Like last year, I was at New York Comic Con with like early. I didn't officially release my books until July of this year, but I did a Kickstarter for pre-orders. I've been
Mhm.
selling them at conventions, kind of like almost as if you're an artist and you're putting out singles or you're doing a bunch of shows before your album drops. That's kind of how I was looking at it. Like that way, when I did do the full-fledged release, like nobody was sitting there like we don't know what you're talking about or know what's going on. So like last year, New York Comic Con, like I had me and some of my homeboys like being basically a street team. Like we're passing out flyers as people are walking into the con. Like I was running around the con trying to meet publishers and trying to meet editors. Not necessarily like, oh, I want you guys to publish and edit my book, but like, hey, I'm here. Like, had I not gone to Comic Con, like I wouldn't have got the Hypland deal. Like I wouldn't have done that, or I wouldn't have been able to meet and befriend Scott Snyder and be able to do his Substack masterclass and talk through my book and stuff like that. So a lot of networking to this year at New York Comic Con, like sitting there at the table, having my own booth, getting the word out there, still doing the street team thing, and having my homies outside passing out books, having my homies work my table as I'm running around trying to meet people and network. And same thing of like doing other conventions of like I tell people like when I have my family members or my friends like work my table with me, I'm like, we run this thing like Walmart, man. We say hello to everybody that walk in. Like, don't nobody
Mhm.
walk past the BlackTooth publishing table without being spoken to. Like, it's not about we might not sell to everybody, but everybody's gonna know everybody's gonna look at us. We gonna build that visibility of everybody looking at us, saying hello. If you stop, we gonna give you the pitch. You buy, you don't. Hey, here's our card. Follow us on Instagram, check us out, kind of being fearless and with things like comics. And not to say that people that are into comics are nerdy, but a lot of us tend to be introverted or like more reserved. So one thing that, advice for everybody, like you got to turn on that business mind and turn on that hustle and just kind of like turn up and like come outside of yourself, whether even if you're not vending, to be able to network with other creators and be like, hey, I have something going on. Yo, do you have any advice? Or like, hey, do you know about any other events going on that they'll let like newer creatives come to? Because it's like talking to other vendors has opened up other opportunities of being able to do other cons and like know what's going on or meet printers or colorists or just like I said, that networking. So it's a bit of like grinding as far as like actually trying to sell product and then trying to sell yourself and your brand to be aware to other people, to make other fans and kind of engross yourself within the scene.
Yeah, we actually met almost exactly a year ago at Comic-Con 2022. In fact, me and Omari were waiting to get some of our book signed by Stephanie Williams, man.
Yeah, shout out to
Uh
Steph, man.
Man, shout out to Steph. What a talented writer, man. It's funny. I've seen her so many times now. She's like, "Oh, here comes Dez." Like she just knows that I'm
Yeah,
ready to get
exactly.
some stuff signed by her, man. But yeah, I had to say, like, everything you were saying was literally us last year. We literally met and talked, and here we are, literally on the podcast, about a year from then. So everything that you were saying about having to come out of your shell a little bit and talk to each other to network and things are literally how we got here today. So I love hearing that.
So, Amari, just as we wrap up here, kind of curious from your perspective
Mhm.
as a founder, as an entrepreneur, as a creative, as a business person. I mean, you wear a lot of different hats, right? You know, what advice would you give to somebody who's looking to potentially step into the space if they want to possibly start their own company, or even if they just want to get in the comic book industry in general and be a creative, you know, since you've done it for such a long time now and this has been a passion of yours from the earliest days in which you can remember, what would you tell somebody who's looking to try to break into that space and potentially make a name for themselves?
I guess the first piece of advice, is I don't want to say be reckless, but I don't know how to describe it other than being reckless. And it's like that recklessness in the sense of like, bro, I didn't know what I was gonna say to Scott Snyder the first time I met him, and it's like, yo, bro, I love your books. Like, I write. Like, I want you to check me out. I want you to like any feedback. Same thing of like meeting different editors at Marvel and even meeting Robert Kirkman and stuff like that. But it's like it's better to just do it and get corrected and learn how to do things properly, but like the first step is to do it. So if that's like prime example, like shout outs to my mentor Greg. Like I have a mentor that like has put me onto a bunch of comic book stuff. Like my mentor Greg Anderson LSA, he writes this amazing indie comic called Isnana, and that was me having Greg's card for buying one of his books at a con and being like, yo bro, all right, so like I think I have this business stuff down. Like, I got my LLC, I got copyrighted my characters, I got all this going. Like, how you really do this comic book stuff? And it's like that might not be the best way to kind of ask somebody. Obviously, I said it way nicer, more professional in the email, but like that was the gist of like, yo, bro, I think I know what I'm doing, but like, yo, put me on, help me out. Or same thing as far as like meeting a person like Des in line where it's like, yo, you got a pod? Like, yo, I make comics, like, yo, come rock with me, come check me out. And like whether it's getting into comics or just doing anything, like a lot of people like psych themselves out because they're like, oh no, I have to have all my ducks in a row. I have to have this. Like, if I'm going to make a comic, I need to make sure I know how to end, how it begins. Like, I need to have the arch nemesis, like all these characters mapped out. But it's like, nah, bro, just start to do it. Just take that leap of faith. Like, you might not be able to see the bottom of the pool, but you got just kind of got to be a little reckless, got to jump in and just get there. You will figure it out as you go along. Obviously, be smart, don't sign bad deals, read contracts, but like, you know, be safely reckless and like just get to it, just get it going.
Yeah, that first step of just like going out there and doing it. It's probably the most difficult thing, but once you do it, then everything else just starts to, I think, fall into place. And I think you're definitely a testament to that, putting in the work and just
Mhm.
like putting yourself out there to make your vision come to life. Do got one more question to ask you before we officially
Yeah,
wrap
for
up.
sure.
Don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm just kind of curious, like outside of your own work, is there anything else that you're like reading or watching in any other medium that's really like inspiring to you that is really just sort of
Mhm.
standing out compared to like other things? Just kind of curious like what you're tapping into right now, and if in case you have any recommendations or things that you've seen in either comics or film or animation, whatever the case may be, that you would want to talk about.
Oh man, I'm currently reading Spy Family, man. I really like Spy Family. Like I've been reading
Mhm.
that manga. That's really dope. Just I'm a binger, so I will say like I wait until something's done before I start watching it. But if we're talking like animation stuff, like I love Big Mouth. Watching Big Mouth. Just finished Vinland Saga season 2. Vinland Saga is
Mhm.
crack. That's super dope.
Banger.
so much dope stuff. I'm like, I'm also a big music fan, so I'm like really big into like this rapper from Baltimore named Shorty Shorty and stuff like that. Like, man, I can go on for hours and hours. I'm also like a Funko Pop guy, so I like collect. I'm
Nice.
willing to bet that I have the biggest black Funko Pop collection in the world. All my Funko Pops are like black characters. And you see my library behind me. These are my Batman books, like Marvel and DC stuff up here. Actual, educated people books over here.
Mhm. Gotta have the scholarly stuff still too as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I just what have I been? I literally like just kind of read like Gail Simone's Batgirl again, like the first volume of her
Mm,
Batgirl.
mhm.
So
Nice. Okay. Yeah, you're tapping into a lot there. I love that. And definitely sound like some great recommendations for people to tap into in case they need something. But Amari, man, I think we on behalf of Two Black Nerds, we just want to thank you again for coming onto
Yes,
the
yes.
podcast today and being so gracious with your time and talking to us about your company, BlackTooth Publishing. Let the people know where they can find you, social media, website. How can people sort of learn more about BlackTooth if they want to dive in more?
yo, so listen, Black Two Publishing on Instagram, Black Two Publishing on YouTube. We're on our physical copies of the books are on Amazon, so you can search us you can search my name, so like Amazon.com/author/ Omari_Malik. Obviously, just search the title of any of the books will pop up, Black2Publishing.com. So we're everywhere, man.
Amazing, amazing. Well, you heard it, folks. Go tap into BlackTooth Publishing, see all the incredible work that they're doing. Amari, thank you again, man. Hopefully, we can connect again soon.
Yes.
For sure, for sure. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.